Let's take a look first at various crimes against the government. Perjury has historically been an offense. What is perjury? Well, perjury consists of making false statements, purposely making false statements under oath. So whether it's an oath that's given in court or it's a requirement on a document that you acknowledge that you are bound to tell the truth, there's some kind of requirement that's made known to you that you must tell the truth in this situation. So perjury wouldn't apply to someone who made statements out of court, someone who walked out of the courtroom during the course of their trial and said, I was never anywhere even close to the scene of the crime, when in fact they were. Well, if this statement is made outside of court when you're not under oath, it's not perjury. You can lie if you want to. But if it's in court when you've been sworn to tell the truth, or you have a document, you have you're swearing out an affidavit where you acknowledge that you have told the truth. If there's some kind of notice that's given to you that you must tell the truth under penalty of law, and you violate that oath, that requirement, then you could be charged with perjury or some other kind of form. Maybe it's false swearing, or some other kind of charge for lying. So these are situations where you are obligated to tell the truth. So perjury, again, the most common instance that we usually think of would be if a witness at a trial purposely lies. So again, it has to be purposeful. So if you testify that you saw the offender on a Monday, then that was the first time in your life you ever saw the accused. It was on a Monday, when in truth, if we really went back and looked at it, it might have been a Tuesday. As long as that wasn't something that was vitally important, or that, again, if it was an honest mistake, or an innocent mistake, we should say, it wasn't a purposeful lie, then you won't be charged with perjury. But if you really believe that it was a Monday and it wasn't, you're not going to be charged with perjury. But if you knew that it was really Tuesday and the date is really important to the proceedings, it's not just some minor fact that is trivial that doesn't matter, but this is a material fact that's important to the proceedings, and you purposely lie about it, you can be charged with perjury. False swearing is a kind of perjury, but it may be making false statements in an official document, or in the past it has included making false statements in some non-judicial proceeding. So something that isn't a trial, isn't before a judge, but some other event where you must tell the truth. But today we often apply false swearing to making false statements on a document when you're obligated to tell the truth. Suborning perjury is when you cause another person to commit perjury. So if you're being charged with a crime and you tell your best friend who's going to appear as a witness, hey, get on the stand and lie and tell them that I was with you the entire night, because that's going to be my alibi. That's going to be my defense. Even though I wasn't with you, tell them that I was. If you did that and that person did lie on the stands, you'd be guilty of suborning perjury. You didn't actually perjure yourself. You didn't tell the lie, but you caused someone else to tell the lie. So suborning perjury is causing another person to commit perjury. Bribery is another crime against the government. So if you offer something of value to some public official and your purpose is to improperly influence them, so it's not just, this is a police officer who did something really nice for you and you baked them a cake and you gave them the cake. Or someone comes into Sheetz or 7-Eleven, a police officer does, and you offer them a free cup of coffee. If you're not trying to influence their performance of their duties, that would not be bribery. But if you offer something of value to try to influence how they do their job, then that could be construed as bribery. Embracery is a special kind of bribery. This is where you try to influence a juror. So you maybe offer money to someone who's sitting as a juror in a trial to get them to vote not guilty because you're friends with the defendant or you are the defendant. Additional crimes against the government include official misconduct in office. So this is someone who is a public official. And so someone who's a public official can engage in really three different types of misconduct. Nonfeasance would be a failure to act when you're supposed to act. So you refuse to act even though you're required as part of your job, as part of a legal duty to act. So this could be nonfeasance. Another kind of misconduct would be misfeasance. You actually do perform an act, but you do it in an improper fashion. So you don't carry out your job correctly. So again, this isn't just an honest mistake, but this is purposely carrying it out in an improper way, doing something improper as part of your job. Um, you know, Carrying out some kind discriminating against someone in how you apply your official duties. Maybe you're a police officer. We could argue that it's misfeasance to racially profile. So you're improperly performing an act that you have a right to do. You have a right to pull over people and make traffic stops, but if you're doing it in an improper way, you're doing it on the basis of race, we could say that this is misfeasance. And so there might be crimes connected with these. You're not going to be charged with a crime of nonfeasance or misfeasance, but you'll be charged with some kind of official misconduct in office. Malfeasance, you're engaging in a wrongful act that an official has no right to do. So you are a police officer and you are taking money from people. You're basically robbing them. You're a police officer and you're telling them to hand over money, hand over their drugs, and obviously you have no right to do that. So that would be malfeasance. So again, with any of these, we're classifying them as nonfeasance, misfeasance, or malfeasance. Those wouldn't be the actual crimes you'd be charged with. You'd be charged with some kind of specific crime that might apply. Obstruction of justice. This is some kind of act that interferes with the proper execution of a public official's duty. And in particular, we're most likely referring to some kind of maybe a criminal investigation or a criminal prosecution. So it could be jury tampering. It could be interfering with a police officer to try to prevent them from carrying out their duties. So you keep blocking them, even though they have a search warrant to go inside a building, you keep blocking them and forbidding them from coming in. It may be suppressing or refusing to produce evidence. So if it's evidence that you're required to produce, or if it's evidence that you maybe tamper with, then you could be charged with obstruction of justice. So for instance, let's say that you're a lawyer for a defendant and the police haven't discovered where the body is, and your client has been charged with murder, and so your client tells you where the body is, and you go out and check it out. It's in the middle of a forest somewhere, and you find the body, but you find that your client did a very poor job of burying and hiding the body. So you, as their attorney, do a better job. You dig a big deeper hole, you conceal that hole, you cover it up, you put things over top of it, so you make it even tougher for the police to find. This would be a form of obstruction of justice. You're tampering with the evidence. You're not allowed to do that. As a lawyer, you could go out and look at it, but you couldn't touch the body, you couldn't move it, you couldn't cover it up more. Another kind of obstruction of justice would be intimidating a witness. And so if you threaten a witness, if you discourage them from testifying or testifying honestly, you could be charged with a crime. And again, just like we've already covered, you could be charged with bribing public officials, so bribing a judge, a jury, a witness, some other public official. Any of these things are forms of obstruction of justice. More crimes against the government include things such as contempt. We usually think of contempt with a trial and a courtroom proceeding, but it could take place in other situations. But a judge has the authority to control his or her courtroom, and also to make sure that his or her orders are followed. So if you disrupt the proceedings of a trial or other judicial proceeding, or if you refuse to obey the orders of a judge or other governmental agency, you could be charged with contempt. As you can see here, Congress has the power to charge people with contempt. So if Congress brings you in, they have a hearing and they want you to answer questions, and you can't legitimately claim the Fifth Amendment protection against incrimination, and you refuse to answer their questions, you could be charged with contempt of Congress. But again, usually we think of contempt as associated with judges and courtrooms. Treason. Treason is violating your allegiance to your own government. So somehow you do something, you give um, information to other governments that hurt, that damage your own government. You aid or assist foreign agents in taking action against your government, or you try to bring about the overthrow of your government. Maybe you don't work with anybody from outside the country, but you do it solely within, but you try to overthrow the United States government. Well, in order to be guilty of treason, there are certain elements. You must be a citizen of that country. So you must have an allegiance to that government. So only an American can be charged with treason against the United States. If you're not an American, then you can't be charged with treason because you're not violating your obligation to your own government. So you must have an allegiance owed to the government. You must do an act that violates that allegiance. So it goes against the interest of the country in an illegal way. And you must have a criminal intent. If you are a foreigner and you're taking action against a foreign government, then you may be guilty of espionage, which is basically spying. So if you are illegally obtaining information about that government, you could be charged with spying, with espionage. Sedition is, we don't see this anymore because we have concerns about First Amendment freedom of speech interests, but sedition involves communications or an agreement to stir up treason or defame the government. So we require some action if we're going to charge anyone with any kind of seditious actions. But in the past, we have people, even in the United States, in the early days of the country, were charged with sedition merely for criticizing the government. We don't allow that kind of charge anymore. You won't be arrested for merely criticizing the government. You have to take actions that are actually meant to bring about treason or some other kind of overthrow of the government. Then we might be able to charge you with sedition. But ordinary communications that are just saying, I don't like the president, I don't like the government, those things will no longer be treated as sedition.